Nigerian Senate is set to continue with the screening of the remaining ministerial nominees forwarded last week by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. On the screen now, we're seeing Dele Alake, who is a special advisor, of course, to the president being screened there. So let's just listen to what's going on the floor of the Senate.
After the unfortunate annulment, we plunged into one of the very pernicious sections of our history in this country. And I was right in the middle of it, and I had the rare privilege and selective exposure to be part and participant observer of the entire scenario. Of course, we went into the struggle. I joined forces with all the Democrats of this country and those who are pushing for democracy to push out the military. We call them militocracy. They practiced militocracy at the time. And of course, as an editor of the publisher whose mandate was annulled, there was really no choice. And it wasn't just a professional thing. It was a passion for the best for this country that we all carried at the time. So, the present president of Nigeria, then a senator, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in the vanguard and the forefront of the struggle. Then a senator, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in the vanguard and the forefront of the struggle, the pro-democracy struggle of this country at that time. And I joined forces with him, and we started all the covert and overt operations to push out the military at the time. In fact, at some point, my office was shut for 2 years by the late Abacha, and we were on the streets. But we were undaunted because we were propelled by the conviction that there was a need to get our country on the path of progress, development, and democracy. So we shunned all sacrifices, pains of sacrifices, and all that. And at a point, the house of our president, now our president, was firebombed in Lagos. And those of us who were leg operatives of the entire Nadeco struggle were in jeopardy. Our houses were ransacked, we were chased, and at some point, guns were brandished at me between Ikeja Airport and the Concord Press. It was all over the news. It wasn't a covert thing at that time. And when the heat was too much, I also had to leave the country. And I was away and joined forces with those who were in exile, our current president, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Professor Wole Soyinka. The late Commodore Dan Suleiman was one of the people with us in London. That was when the London pro-democracy seed was sown by the pro-democracy activists at that time. And from there, we went to the US, and we were sowing the pro-democracy seed and carrying the fervor throughout the world. And for 5 years, without firing a single shot, we held the jugular of the military. And we succeeded, of course, with the cooperation, active cooperation, and sacrifices of those who were in Nigeria at the time to chase away the military. And here we are, today, by the grace of God, we have the democracy that we had all yearned for. Thank you very much.
Senator Salim Musa.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair, my respected distinguished colleagues, the nominee. First and foremost, I will congratulate you for being one of the best to be nominated. I have just few questions. One, the question has to do with the nation's image and the rebranding that we have thought has been going on for a long time. In the last 4 years that I have been in the Senate, I knew that the budget of Ministry of Information National Orientation Agency have been coming, and you will always see that they are talking about rebranding Nigeria, Nigeria's image. Nigeria's image is not only to brand it internationally, but even within Nigeria. So far, I can say that I have not seen much that we have achieved looking at the scenario of things in this country. We know that rebranding has to do with people, it has to do with governance, it has also to do with the cultural and the heritage that we do have. Tourism, investment, and what we will also be able to have to produce here, not only in terms of products, but even our attitude to export out of this country. If for any reason you happen to be in an office that require this country, you should be able to, as an expert, know where are the ills and how do we mitigate them. Instead of spending so much with the few resources, from the few resources we have. I will recall the former Minister of Information has mentioned that we are going digital. I can tell you 80% of Nigerians do not know what that digital transformation is. And a lot of billions of naira have so far been spent. If you happen to be in that position, what are the measures you are going to bring to mitigate that? And how can our passports be made to be respected by other nations? Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Yao Sahabi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Yao Sahabi Al-Haji, representing Zamfaranos Senatorial District. Mr. Nominee, let me first of all congratulate you for coming this far in your chosen career and profession, which is journalism, I believe. Mr. Nominee, if I could recall, there was a bill that was brought into this chamber in the 9th Senate, which has to do with regulation and the supervision of social media. Some people were for this bill, while others were vehemently against it. Should this country be opportune to get you appointed by Mr. President as Minister of Information, how do you intend to reconcile these two positions? Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Cyril Fasui.
Good afternoon, Senate President sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues. My name is Cyril Fasui, Ekiti North, the fountain of knowledge. Standing before you is a nominee from this fountain of knowledge, a very loyal, dependable, and responsible ally of the current president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We call the nominee Ajiroba, meaning of Ajiroba is one that wakes to see the king. Standing before you is Ajiroba Dele Alake, very responsible, very dependable. We will open him up to any question you want to ask. Sorry. Because we know he's responsible and is intelligent, ready to answer any question. And without much ado, I want us to know that this Senate will do Mr. President a lot of good by approving his nomination to be one of the ministers of Nigeria. Thank you.
So in other words, the distinguished Senator Cyril Fasuyi from Ekiti. The Ekiti senators have no objection and they have no question to ask him. So in that case, let's concentrate on those who have questions that can enlighten Nigerians. Distinguished Senator Mongunu.
Distinguished Senate President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohammed Tahir Munguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. Mr. Nominee, congratulations. I've gone through your resume and also the struggles you made towards actualization of the June 12th mandate. I want to equally recall with nostalgia that I am part and parcel of the activists as a young man and a member of the House of Representatives. The late Chief MKO Abiola recruited about 3 of us to go to Cyprus to represent Nigeria as true representative of the people, not to allow Shonekon to go there as the head of Nigeria, but being true representative of the people. He paid for our fees to go. In fact, I'm traveling out of the country for the first time, first class. That time, we went to Cyprus to represent Nigeria, but unfortunately, we could not be allowed to attend the venue of the conference. We are not admitted, and we came back to Nigeria, just to show that I am part and parcel of the struggle for the actualization of the June 12th mandate. Well, my question is, there is a need for paradigm shift towards value reorientation in this country. Value reorientation in the sense that there is a need to make, more especially our young ones, to be patriotic, to be nationalistic in their outlook and thinking, and to think Nigeria first, the value of discipline in all our national endeavors and what have you. And then the agency that is charged with the responsibility of carrying out that mandate is the National Orientation Agency. Throughout my stay in the House of Representatives, I was privileged to have a glance at the budget of the National Orientation Agency. And their budget is not enough to carry out such a very sensitive responsibility that they have been charged to undertake. So, parabencho, looking at your resume,
if Mr. President, in his wisdom, deems it fit to assign you the Ministry of Information and National Orientation, what steps are you going to take towards having a paradigm shift for the purpose of value reorientation in this country? That is my question. Thank you.
The distinguished Senator Ningi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Let me welcome Mr. Dele Alake to this hallowed chamber. And I would like to say, personally, I thought Dele Alake is one of the very best appointee of this government, and I thought he is doing an excellent job in the villa. And for me, Dele Alake is a fresh breath of air. As a spokesman, I don't see him as an attack dog journalist, neither do I see him as a hawk. Mr. President, if I were the president of this nation, I would have allowed Dele Alake to continue to be his spokesman, but I'm not the president, so I have no choice. Having said that, I would like to refer to you, Dele, to our Constitution, 1999 Constitution, as amended. Clause 88, sub A and B. And I would like to, by the leave of the Senate President, to quickly read through. Now it says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, each house of the National Assembly shall have powers by resolution published in its journal and in the Gazette of the Federal Government of the Federation to direct or cause to be directed on an investigation, one, on any matter, and the catchword is on any matter, or things with respect to which the powers to make laws, and then B, the conduct of affairs of any person, and the catchword there is any person, authority, ministry or government, department, charged or intended to be charged with the duty of or responsibility of. I quickly rise to make those, to call those phrases of the Constitution, because in the last 2 decades or so, particularly the minister of the government, and particularly the head of MDS, do not understand this. Neither do they appreciate it, neither probably they don't know. So as someone who is going to attend to federal executive meetings, because of your knowledge, your disposition, what will you say about these particular clauses? Several times here, the National Assembly called on ministers and head of NDS. Some of them deliberately turned this thing down. As a matter of fact, they don't see themselves as being respectable to this institution. And that's why I take time to make it to you that it is important to address these matters once you are past here, and then the president appoints you as a minister. So what do you take these things for? How do you understand it? That is the question.
Distinguished Senator Tambua.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, my colleagues, let me join my colleagues that have spoken earlier than me in congratulating Egbon Dele Alake for your nomination to serve as Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And from your narration and the rendition you gave us of your journey and struggles in the development of our democracy, I can see that you have, to some extent, shared struggle, political struggle, and ideals, and possibly even coming from the same camp with the immediate past Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. What would you do differently from Alhaji Lai Mohammed, assuming you are tasked with the portfolio of Minister of Information of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Thank you.
I hope the nominee is taking record of the questions. Distinguished Senator Ismaila Kawu.
Thank you, Mr. President, my dear respected colleague. I am Suleiman Abdurrahman Kawu Sumaila, representing Kano South Senatorial District. Mr. President, my dear colleague, I don't want to repeat myself, but I quite agree with the previous speakers congratulating the nominee, and thank you, Mr. President, of nominating one of the best hand, which I think he will, if he became the Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, more officially his area, he will add value to the Nigerian development or political development system. But I have a simple question to ask. Listening to you attentively and going through your resume, I cherish your struggle during June 12. Now, inshallah, you will be the member of Federal Executive Council soon. My only question or clarification, which I need from you, is how do you intend to what we perceive as injustice meted by our beloved Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa led and his vice presidential candidate, Chief Sylvester Ogu, who contested alongside with the late MKO Abiola in 1993. The last administration honored late Chief MKO Abiola and Babagana Kingibe was the highest national honor of the land. But despite the contribution of Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa led and Chief Sylvester Ogu, who contested alongside with Abiola, although the vice presidential candidate of Chief Abiola abandoned the struggle, joined the military, but the last administration honored him with the second national honor of the land, abandoned Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa and Chief Sylvester Ogu. Will you support me if I propose a bill to the National Assembly to, as a member of Federal Executive Council, will you support us to address that? No, I know what I'm saying. I know what I'm saying. Will you support the proposal to address that injustice meted to us? I from Kano, who represent Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa, and of course our nationalist Chief Sylvester Ogu. Thank you.
The last question should have been directed to our colleagues in the Senate, that if a proposal relating to a bill comes up, whether our colleagues will support. But for national honors, he was, from his narration, he was only in the June 12 struggle. alongside the current president. He wasn't the prime mover of June 12 struggle. And he's not in a position to give anybody national honor. Senator Abiru.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, sitting as the chair, and my distinguished colleagues. First, I would like to congratulate the nominee, described as the Ajiroba, as described by my colleague, Senator Cyril Fasui. That's Ajiroba Dele Alake. I want to congratulate him on his nomination as a minister of as a potential minister of the Federal Republic. And I also want to say that I was very much engrossed with his sense of history when he was making his presentation, and I fully support his nomination as well. And I also like to thank the President of the Federal Republic for giving us one of the best that we can find in journalism, an accomplished personality that we have right in front of us. Now, having been part of history, particularly in the last 40 years, and the evolution of our democracy, even at the point where it was terminated, and of course, when it continued. What I would like to put across is for the nominee to share with us that how do we continue to protect and guard the democracy that has come to stay in Nigeria in particular. Nomination. Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues.
I haven't really seen serious questions yet, but so I will just allow just maybe two more, and then we can take him. I don't know right now with the leader, distinguished Senator Olare and Senator Abdul Fattah, and even Senator Sadiq. Looking at that order, I think the leader, Ashiru, should be allowed to speak on your behalf. So ask question on their behalf.
Mr. President, I'm Senator Ashiru, representing the good people of Kwara South. Mr. President, it's really refreshing having somebody like Mr. Alake as a nominee of Mr. President. And I want to start by saying that we are very grateful for him for giving you the honor to be part of his team. Coincidentally, Mr. Alake is a journalist, and it's very likely that he will take over Ministry of Information from my brother, the past Minister of Information. My concern really is that for a very long time, we have studied that Ministry of Information in most cases is a cost center. Most of the budget, they spend and spend and spend with little or no revenue. Even the NTA that was supposed to be rebranded has not been able to give us much in terms of competition with the private television station. Now I want to ask, your ministry will take over information, likelihood, if you are Minister of Information and Tourism. Tourism is a very large industry. And I believe that Nigeria as a nation, because of our peculiarity, because of our cultural value, because of our natural endowment, can survive on tourism. My senatorial district is an example. We have a lot of fantastic sites. The tallest waterfall in the whole of West Africa is in my senatorial district. We have a very large heritage, a museum, they say museum, which is a world-renowned museum. Equally too, we have a lot of shelter rocks and many interesting sites. I want to know if by law, by chance, you are in charge of this ministry, what are you going to bring to the table to make Nigeria earn money from tourism? Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Nominee, that's the first major serious question. It asked you on the area of tourism, and if you are given the opportunity in the Ministry of Information, what will you do to improve the internally generated revenue of this country through tourism because of the various tourist sites across the country? I think you should start from that answer, then you now go down to the rest.
Thank you, distinguished President of the Senate. Thank you, distinguished senators. Actually, I was following the pattern of the questions very meticulously, and in my trade, I'm a writer and I'm a journalist. When we write with inspiration and conviction, but we build our thoughts before we write, so that the thoughts will be logical, will be sequential. And that's why, Mr. President, distinguished senators, actually the issue of tourism in Nigeria, with due deference to the opinion of the Senate President, has been very difficult. It's not difficult in my own estimated view at all, and in my considered opinion. And this I say with all sense of responsibility, given my modest globally. We need to examine the factors that contribute to enhancing tourism in any milieu. What are those factors? The very first one is security. Adequate security. We cannot talk of any meaningful development of tourism without security. It is when there is security that the economic development flourishes. And tourism is a factor, if not a variable, of economic development. So holistically, security is a sine qua non for any kind of development in any sphere of a society. My distinguished senator who has a question did mention his area and the greatest or largest waterfall in West Africa. However, even for domestic tourists, there has to be peace of mind before you can decide to visit. Well, you must be fed adequately. You must have a means of livelihood. Before tourism is tertiary factor of economic development. It's not the primary for a human being. A human being who wants to go and visit the waterfall, who wants to go and watch animals, who wants to do tourism generally, see sites, historical sites, must have been a little bit fed. And there must be security of movement assured. Elsewhere in the world where people gravitate for tourism, there is a modicum of security. When you know that your lives and properties are secure, then you can go and watch animals in the bush. You can go to the Masai Mara in Kenya, into the Games Reserve, and watch animals and sleep in the bush because there is a feeling of security. So, distinguished senators, the first thing we must attack in enhancing tourism is internal national security. There's no running away from it. Of course, there is the value chain, the multiplier effect. Therefore, it affects virtually every area of our endeavor in this country. There are other factors, but I just don't want to waste your time. The most important, in my considered view, is security. I will hesitate before going anywhere to engage in tourism if I do not feel safe. And you agree with me, in the last several years, we've not had the best feeling of security. However, now we are having it. Yes, sir.
We have noted your concern on security. But if you are appointed a Minister of Information, and then we collectively, because security belongs to all, and we put our house in order, and the nation is secured, what are the initiatives you bring forward to enhance tourism, assuming we also have done something about security, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. I did say that there are other factors, but that the most important, which is the foundation, that's why I hammered on it. Now, when that foundation is laid, and we all know that when you are even building construction, once your foundation is solid, the rest is putting the building blocks. Now, those other factors are the building blocks. For instance, we need to put infrastructure around those tourism sites. It is important for any tourist, whether local or foreign, to have access even to the tourism sites. Take Ikogosi in Ekiti, for instance. If there is no very good access roads, it will be difficult for us to attract any. And let me also say here, Mr. President, that no matter the amount of advertisement and publicity you wrap around any other venture, if the most important ingredient of success for that venture is not treated, the advert and publicity, that's it. My time when our present governor was, present president was governor of Lagos State, I was his commissioner for information and strategy. And that is why we brought the issue of strategy into information management. It is not just information management per se. However, I'll come to that later. So if we are able to put in the right infrastructure, electricity, access roads, the personnel that will even service those tourism ventures, these are all important. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you that you've been all over the world to tourism sites. You've seen the courteous nature of the tourism personnel or the sites personnel. They need training. We have to bring training on board for all our tourism ventures and sites. We have to put in the infrastructure. Infrastructure is not just the roads. I also mentioned the electricity, even the structures, even those sites, the way we design the sites. There's one place in.
So now you have mentioned the things that need to be done for tourism to work. But you have not mentioned the initiatives that you are going to bring to bear, because you are not the one that will do the infrastructure. You propose those things to the Federal Executive Council. Please attempt to answer the question of distinguished Senator Tambua and distinguished Senator Nengi, if you noted them down, so that we can now look at your colleagues, no, not your colleagues, we can look at your senators from Ekiti, Adaramodu, and the Senate leader, so that way, yes, I noticed that if you notice the way I'm going, I would like a situation whereby we have a spread. So we have the same minority leader. Your protest is noted. Okay, so just answer the other questions from my colleagues. Distinguished Senator Nengi, distinguished Senator Tambua. Well, because if you notice, I attempted to go towards Ekiti, but most of the speeches coming from there are full of accolades instead of questions. So I'm more interested in those who have questions for him. He wants to answer questions. He wants to answer questions.
Mr. President, sir. Exactly. So I need to start from the beginning. Yes. You're talking to him. I want to address him. I don't know which ones they asked. Their names are not there.
Check the Senator from Lagos. Check in front.
I don't know which one Tambua asked. I just wrote the questions. Mr. Senate President, sir, I wrote down the questions. Yes, distinguished senators, the very first question by a senator from Niger State is on the national image of Nigeria, that what would we do differently if I happen to be in that ministry, and especially our foreign image and local image. Now, again, my answer is very simple. There is no foreign image that can be ever good that is not contingent on domestic policies anywhere in the world. However much we burnish our image, engaging public relations practitioners and all that, is all money down the drain. I will not recommend that for Mr. President. What I will recommend for the president of this country is to concentrate on good governance within Nigeria. And once there is good governance within Nigeria, once our domestic policies are positive and responsive and responsible, the image of Nigeria will naturally shoot up. It's a kind of interrelated. So we are not going to embark on wasting money on burnishing image, polishing our image, when the domestic situation of Nigeria is nothing home to write about. So the first thing I will recommend is that our domestic our domestic policies must be right and must be people-oriented at all times. Thank you. On the second one is the social media regulation. Yes, there is some concern, not just here but all over the world, but particularly in our own environment, about the pernicious nature of social media or effects. The social media has two sides. There is a positive side, there is a negative side, just like every human endeavor. Now, the positive side, we all know, if there's instant news, whatever happens, you get it immediately, and then you can propagate your information widely at a very short time. And other things, you communicate faster with social media. However, the downside is so detrimental to good and decent society. What I will support is the strengthening of regulations. In my time as a journalist and as an editor for 10 years unbroken in this country, I discovered that there are laws that guide our conduct in every area of human endeavor. But the application of these laws has been short. In fact, even victims of libel cases, of aspersions, of defamation and all kinds of negative things in the media hesitate to also apply the law against the culprits. I have been on the editor's chair for several years, and the most important point to an editor is to avoid litigation. But the receiving public may not know it. But the public would not also seize the opportunity of applying the full weight of the law when there is infraction by any medium, whether social media or newspaper or online or electronic. So I will recommend a strengthening of our regulations and application of those regulations. It is not just to enact laws, but the laws must also be tested. It is from testing that we know the weight, the efficacy, proficiency, and efficiency of those regulations. So that's the first thing I would do about social media, strengthening of the laws and application of those regulations. And I will support anything that comes from these hallowed chambers to promote that course of action. If there are laws, if there are motions, bills in line with this, please be sure of our full cooperation. Value or reorientation of our society. That is very, very weighty. And I agree with the distinguished senator that asked that question. In the days gone by, when some of us were very young and we were toddlers, we used to say that, we say these days that Nigeria had seen it better, it was better in our days and all of that. But Nigeria hasn't changed in terms of geography, in terms of nomenclature. The sun still rises in the east and sets in the west. So what has gone wrong? It is the character of the inhabitants of the nation called Nigeria that has changed tremendously. And how? It is the value system that has been desecrated by successful generations. I will not say the government, the legislature, judiciary, no. It is us in totality as a society, as human beings. Because when we say leadership, we are all leaders at various levels, either at government level, in the executive, legislature, judiciary, even at the state level, local government, even at family levels, which is the most important unit of a society, the family unit. There's always a leader in the family. How has that leader inculcated the right values down the throats of the children? This is where we must start value reorientation from. It is not just regulations and laws. No, it is the attitude we bring to bear on it. So I will support serious attitudinal change. And we are going to, if I find myself in office that is responsible for value reorientation, the first thing that we will face is attitudinal change from top to bottom. Everybody. Executive obedience to legislative oversight, which was asked by the distinguished senator there. I believe in the separation of powers. I did not take part in the struggle for democracy for several years for nothing. Now that we have had the democracy, we must guard it jealously. One of the bases of guarding democracy jealously is strict adherence to rule of law and therefore separation of powers. When the legislature is saddled with the power to oversight or to perform oversight functions, all the other arms of government must necessarily obey. So I do not see, and I cannot justify how anybody in the executive will disobey calls from the legislature, either to explain something or to rub minds or to even exhaustively discuss issues concerning all of us. I am a strict adherent to the rule of law and the observance of the separation of powers. I support that fully. To Tofa and Ugo's national honors that a distinguished senator also asked.
Let me invite the minority leadership to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. President of the Senate, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, my name is Simon Watkon. I'm from Plateau State, and I represent Plateau North. Mr. Nominee, a lot of accolades have been showered on you, and from your CV, you have done incredibly well for Nigeria, especially the struggle for democracy. And I'm convinced virtually every senator here knows that. Seated as senators here, the issue of our political parties is secondary. We are senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I'm saying this because of the question I want to ask you. Therefore, any question coming from me should be taken that is coming from the Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not as a minority party senator. We all have equal status here. Like I did tell the Senate President, one day he may be seated here and I will be there. My question is that I heard you, sir. You said, as a writer or as a journalist or an image maker, you speak out of inspiration and conviction. You don't just say anything. You must have the inspiration and you must have been convinced that what you are saying is the right thing. You've talked about the social media too. I've read on social media, sir, your statement concerning other political parties during the election. I read a statement where you labeled supporters of a particular presidential candidate as wild dogs, buying blood on social media. Have you come across that statement? Are you aware of it? Did you say that? If you didn't say that, excuse me, sir. Please, let me say that. I've not.
The minority leader, two things. Number one, you say one day that you will come and sit here. And that I will come and sit there. But you have forgotten that I sat there before I came here. That's number one. Then number two, to try and avoid campaign issues. Campaigns are over. We are now in governance. That is why once you pass through that door, you are coming into the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And you started well by pointing out that you are not asking questions on behalf of political party or on behalf of minority or majority. You are asking questions as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That means your questions must be nationalistic and not partisan. So, but because of the fact that you are a leader, the chair continues to protect you. So go on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secondly, sir, we know that. Yes, I'm asking another question. I've asked him whether it is true or not. So he is the one to answer, sir. Yeah, second question. The second question, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Point of order.
Your mic. Oh.
Senator Muhammad Adamu Aleru is my name, representing Kebbi Central. Mr. President, Order 55, with your permission, I will read. When a senator is speaking, no senator may converse aloud or take any noise or make any noise or disturbance to interrupt him. Mr. President, there are so many interruptions, particularly from the other side. I want you to abstain this point of order so that there will be silence and decorum in the way you conduct the affairs of this chamber. Thank you.
The point of order is sustained. The leader of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Michael Okoyemi Bamidele, representing Ekiti Central. I have come under Order 12, Order 55 specifically, Order 12. And it's important that this is stated. No senator may interrupt another senator while speaking, unless, and that's my emphasis, unless 12A, to call attention to a point of order or privilege and suddenly arising. 2, to call attention to the want of a quorum. C, to call attention to the presence of stranger. D, to move a closure motion or to move that the business of the day be called on. Mr. President, the reason I also had to raise this point of order is that Order 55 from subsection 1 to 12 are clear as to the code, the mode of debate on the floor. And while a senator must be listened to in silence and no other senator must interrupt him, our order also, our rules are made arrangement or provisions for situations in which even a standing senator, a sitting senator, may be interrupted. That is stated in our rules. The issue at stake was that the minority leader was raising questions that bordered on campaign. This had happened several months ago. And if we are here as senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria screening ministerial nominees, we are not supposed to bring in issues that had come and gone. Political parties contest under tension. Thank you, sir.
The leader of the Senate, your point of order is upheld. The distinguished Senator Darlington Wokocha, you are to make your contribution. Please go ahead and make your contribution because you addressed your hand. You have another question? You have another question? Or if you have another question, please go ask very quickly because we have other nominees to take. Please ask quickly.
Mr. President, Mr. Nominee, sir, as somebody that will be the image maker if you are eventually appointed by Mr. President as Information Minister of this country. We know that out of patriotism, we are supposed to be conversant with our national anthem. Mr. President, if you allow me, I will ask the nominee to recite the second stanza of the national anthem. Thank you.
Yes, distinguished Senator Wokocha, not point of order, your contribution. Just ask the question, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. And dear colleagues, my name remains Darlington Nwokocha. I represent the entire Nigeria, but Abia Central in particular. Mr. Nominee, I want to welcome you to the floor, but I want to make some special reference to your resume. Page 5, item 5. Mr. President, may I read? The item 5 says that you introduced the first ever Bill of Freedom of Information in Nigeria into the Lagos House of Assembly and went as far as conducting the first ever public hearing on the bill in Nigeria in 2005. That's barely 18 years ago. But I want to make reference to a certain provision in the Constitution, which I want you to take to recognize perfectly well. You have been in the media and information and communication space for decades. You may very well be familiar with Section 22 of 1999 Constitution as amended of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to the fact that the press, the radio, television, and other agencies of the media shall at all times be free to hold government of the day to account for Nigerian people. We all witnessed how state authorities gagged some media organizations in the last administration. How would the press freedom, considering that 18 years ago what you did, be guaranteed at the national space?
I actually thought you were about to give us examples of what happened in the First and Second Republic, that there were public hearings. And then you would have challenged him. But thank you for agreeing with him. Distinguished colleagues, there is the leader.
Mr. President, contrary to expectation, my point of order is not by extension of time. I will do that in another 3 minutes. My point of order, sir, is Order 52, sub 4. And the reason it's important that I make this clear is that if I have your permission to read, sir, I would like to read. Mr. President. Order 52, sub 4. A senator must confine his observations to the subject under discussion and may not introduce matter irrelevant thereto. Mr. President, it's important that we know, and I want to say this with due respect to the minority leader. He has been wonderful as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and he has contributed very immensely to ensuring that proceedings on the floor have been meaningful. However, unfortunately, he appears to have brought politics into this thing by asking the nominee standing before us to recite any of the stanzas of the national anthem, which of course is a piece of cake. But because that had not been our tradition, and we have not done this to any of the other nominees, if I did not say this, I'm moving
that that question or request be expunged, because if it is not, and we rule that he will not recite it, it will look as if we had something to hide. It is irrelevant to the extent of the provisions of Order 52 sub 4, and I so move, Mr. President.
Your point of order, in fact, even if you ask me as the Senate President to recite the second stanza, I'll do it often. It is expected that every adult in Nigeria has the stanzas in his heart. Every adult. We are here to do serious business of how to move this country forward, and then to ask the nominees what they'll bring on the table to assist us to get out of the current cauldron. It is not necessarily to sing songs. So your point of order is sustained. Senator Jimikuta.
Mr. President, standing as the chair of the Committee of the Whole, my name is David Esu Jimkuta, representing the good people of Taraba South, Kororofa Kingdom. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, having gone through
Mr. President, I rise under Order 8, sub 3, to move for an extension of time to enable the Senate seat beyond 2.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that these proceedings be extended beyond 2 p.m. Those in support of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Yes, Senator Jimikuta. And immediately after Senator Jimikuta, I would like to end with Ekiti. So I'll go back to either Senator Adaramodu or the Senate leader. But the Senate leader has spoken enough. So Senator Adaramodu, after Senator Jimikuta, you say something, then he will answer so that we can go on to the next nominee.
Thank you, Mr. President. David Jimkuta, representing the good people of Taraba South, the headquarters of Kororofa Kingdom. Mr. President, having gone through his resume, I want to beg my distinguished colleague for the nominee to take a leave of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Adaramodu.
Thank you. Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair of the Committee of Whole. I'm Yemi Adaramodu, Senator from Ekiti South and from Ekiti State. In seconding the motion moved by my colleague, Senator Jim Kuta, that the nominee who has answered very seriously and positively and progressively the questions posed to him. Ordinarily, I'm from Ekiti State. Not only that I'm from Ekiti State, he's from the other constituency, which I even represent in this hallowed chambers, that is the media. And we can see him. He's a media legend, he's a media avatar. He has been on it for a very long time. And when we look at the resume, we will be convinced that it's going to do a human. And then we even say it, that the taste of the pudding is in the eating. In Lagos State, with our president, as he was then the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Dele Alake was the mouth, it was the trumpet that made all the human, all the feats in Lagos State to be known by Nigerians. And if we give him a bigger trumpet to blow in Nigeria in that wise is going to make Nigeria very proud, and it's going to blow the feet to the world, to the global space. And finally, is from the land of honor, Ekiti State. Is an ambassador of honor, and is not going to renege on that. I will even put it to him that the National Orientation Agency must be revived, because gone were those days when we were hearing, if you are a teacher, teach well. If you are a worker, work well. If you are a driver, drive well. So the National Orientation Agency under you, I know that is going to grow more wings this time and fly our orientation to every nook and cranny of Nigeria. Mr. President, we are very grateful from Ekiti State, and we are happy with his nomination and his screening today. And we are very sure that this hallowed chamber is going to confirm him to become a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
So, Mr. Nominee, Ekiti has spoken, and nobody can say that Ekiti has been marginalized in the proceedings. So Ekiti has been marginalized in the proceedings. So, but there are still a few questions that you were itching to answer before you take leave of the Senate. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President. The question which was asked from that side of the chambers on freedom of the press really touched me. And the man did a little bit of research, the distinguished senator, going back to 2005, when I was the first to bring a bill of Freedom of Information Act into the Lagos State House of Assembly, and did a public hearing, and it's all on record. And that exactly signposts my own deep convictions about press freedom in this country. Having been a practitioner, I am still a practitioner, because we have an aphorism in journalism that once a reporter, you are a reporter for life. And so I remain a reporter. And so the ideals, the tenets, the principles, the norms, and the mores of that profession, I am one of those who uphold it, who will uphold it assiduously with every sinew in my veins to make sure that press freedom is sustained in this country. However, to every privilege, there are responsibilities. I am not advocating an absolute press freedom without responsibilities. And I had a cause to say to some group of media men just a few days back that those of us who are gatekeepers, editors, managing directors, and all that, the gatekeepers have an onus on them. It behoves on them to regulate whatever comes out for the sanity of our society, because information is power. When information is irresponsibly purveyed, it can lead to cataclysmic events and destruction, chaos, social anomie in the society. So I am very, very vehement on responsibility aspect of the press, and I will uphold it to the very last atom of my breath. Thank you.
I love to say, Dele Alake, we have watched you over the years. We don't have any doubts about your capacity to handle any portfolio that your boss and our dear president may decide to endow you with. So we are happy with the enlightenment that you have received from the Senate and the enlightenment that you have also given to us. You may now take leave of the Senate. Next nominee, please. Mr. Nominee, Professor Ali Pate. Yeah? Distinguished colleagues, we have before us another nominee of Mr. President, Alhaji Mohammed Idris. Welcome to the hallowed chambers of the Senate. If you have something to add to your CV or a summarized version of your resume, you may do so and thereafter answer a few questions from the distinguished senators. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, Your Excellency, the Deputy Senate President, and other leadership, members of the leadership of the Senate, distinguished senators. This is an uncommon privilege to be nominated by Mr. President to offer services to our great nation. Let me place on record my sincere appreciation to the President of Nigeria and to members of the National Assembly for this very rare opportunity. As mentioned, my name is Mohammed Idris. I was born in May of 1966 in Katsina, but I am from Niger State. My father is a Nupe man, and I'm also from a Nupe man from Niger State, from Baku local government. Because my father was in the public service, we went around this country, and therefore, my primary education happened in so many cities across Nigeria. But I finished at Central Primary School, Kwantagora, went to Government Secondary School, Rijau, finished in 1982, went for some remedial course at Zungeru College of Advanced Studies in Bida, Niger State, and then proceeded in 1983 when I got admission as an undergraduate student at Usman Danfodio University, University of Sokoto, now Usman Danfodio University. I had a pre-degree program there, a special pre-degree program that lasted 1 year. And then I was enrolled as an undergraduate student at the Department of Modern European Languages. I took a degree in English in 1987. And by the special request of my university, I was asked to stay behind to also teach as an NYC member in the same university. Therefore, from being a student around August of 1987, communication skills to undergraduates. This was a special request made by my own university at that time. After the NYSC, I was also given a part-time job before my full-time appointment as a lecturer. But before that happened, the Federal College of Education, Katsina, sought my services to also come and help to consolidate the Department of English and Communication Arts in Federal College of Education, Katsina. So I moved there. I started work there in January of 1989. And after a few years, I became also a postgraduate student at Bayero University, Kano. There at Bayero University, Kano, I had the privilege of also teaching some undergraduate students English and communication skills at Bayero University. This lasted up until 1994. Upon graduation, after my master's degree, I came back to Federal Qualification Katsina, but I didn't stay long because I had a different passion. I had a passion to teach and inculcate communication to the minds of especially people in the public service. I realized at that time that there was this communication gap between members of the civil service and the Nigerian public, and so I picked special interest in that. I attended some courses in that regard, went to various course centers in Nigeria and overseas, and I specialized as a corporate communications consultant. After that, I set up one of the first corporate communication companies in northern Nigeria, and it's still existing. This was around 1995 rather. Our clientele included government establishments, the organized private sector, and so many others. Now, communication, because it is so dear to our dear nation, formed the bedrock of my belief and my passion, because I felt that without communication, there couldn't be anything. Without proper communication, there couldn't be any meaningful development. And therefore, I emphasize on the role of communication in the development of our dear nation. My company, like I said earlier, had so many clients across government and the private sector. In 2003, I set up the first publication dealing with business and economy in northern Nigeria. It was called The Market. It debuted in 2003, and it continued to be in the newsstand until around 2011, when we thought that we should expand that and establish a broader newspaper. It is called Blueprint Newspaper. We established Blueprint Newspapers in 2011, and since then has become one of the most respected national dailies in this country. I want to state, Your Excellency, Mr. President, that Blueprint Newspaper is one of the first newspaper to break the story of Boko Haram, and especially the bombing of the police force headquarters at that time. Even when the Nigerian police was giving some information about those who they thought were responsible for that bombing, because we decided to get some journalists to embed themselves with the terrorists at that time, we were able to get first-hand information that was useful for the Nigerian government in tackling the menace of that insurgency. I recall that the international media were quoting Blueprint newspapers because we were giving the most incisive information about Boko Haram at that time. That newspaper is still there, and it is running up until this time. Again, I established a radio station. It is called the We FM. Actually, it was in existence, but with a different ownership. But I bought into it, revived it, and it's now one of the leading voices, one of the leading FM stations in Abuja here. Again, Blueprint newspapers, because the President of Nigeria, then President Muhammadu Buhari, graciously gave us a license to float a television station. I want to say it, distinguished senators, that Blueprint newspaper has established that, but we are doing some trainings now, and in the next 2 or 3 months, will be on air. It's going to be one of the biggest television stations in this country. Distinguished senators, I also had a stint in the construction industry. Around 2008, I set up a company that went into construction and real estate development in Nigeria. The success of that perhaps led Mr. President Muhammad Buhari, to nominate me and subsequently appointed me as chair of the Abuja Property Development Company. That company is government owned. Before I took over, it was almost moribund, almost bankrupt. But when I got there in 2008, I made sure that as a board chair, I made sure that company was resuscitated. And I'm happy to report that today the APDC is one of the best private companies owned by government in this country. Because of that success, again, Mr. President reappointed me this year into that board. Of course, all the boards have now been dissolved. Mr. President, I am a member of the International Press Institute. I helped to bring the international media to this country in 2018. It was the first time that the cream of editors from all over the world converged on Abuja to hold what they call the annual Congress of the IPI. It is one of the most prestigious media organizations in the world. Again, Mr. President, I am a distinguished member of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. At some point, I was chair of the Institute in Kaduna chapter. I also became a fellow. I'm a member of the African Public Relations Association and the sitting Secretary General of the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria. I'm also a member of the American-based Online News Association. Distinguished senators, like I said, I'm Mohammed Idris, a teacher, a public relations consultant, a media entrepreneur, and an investor in the real estate and construction industry. Thank you very much.
Let's start with the distinguished Senator Wadada.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues. I am Senator Ahmed Wadada Aliyu, Sarkin Yakin Kefi, representing Nasarawa West Senatorial District of Nasarawa State. I still remain a horse rider. The nominee before us is very well known to me, and his resume and short presentation, verbal presentation about himself also tell us the much we shall expect from him. First and foremost, for socio-economic growth and development of any nation, the education and enlightenment level of such a nation plays a very fundamental role. The nominee before us has been a great contributor to the educational and enlightenment of the citizenry, having played the roles he had played over the years, which of course is or are all contained in his resume and what he said. Again, the private role he played is also cannot be wished away, because the private sector in contemporary economic development is supposed to be the main driver of economic development. Government only plays the role of providing enabling environment, and he has played over the years as a private sector player, contributed greatly to the socio-economic development of Nigeria from the resume and the verbal presentation he has made about himself. My dear colleagues, it is time that we put round peg in round holes. The nominee before us has the requisite competence to be a member of the Federal Executive Council under the government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, having known, it is well known to us, the commitment of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to turn around the fortunes of Nigeria. And that's why the renewed hope is today at hand. I think the nominee before us in all ramification fits into the sphere or the cycle or the confinement of the renewed hope. So I call on us to give him the needed support so that we screen and eventually confirm him to be a minister under the present administration. Thank you, my colleagues.
Very distinguished colleagues, I'm sure the President took cognizance of all the qualities enumerated by distinguished Senator Wadada before nominating him. So I'll prefer that we go straight into questions so that the nominee can answer the questions and then and take leave of the Senate. Distinguished Senator Garuba.
Thank you very much, the Senate President and my distinguished colleague. Mr. President, the nominee is known to me. We went to the same secondary school. He was my junior, and he has performed very well. But despite that, just like other people have said, we have presented among the best candidates, and we will be happy for him to take questions. And I would want to take the first question. Mohammed, you are an entrepreneur and a communication consultant. Today we have unemployment in this country. Nigerians, some of them have graduated 10 years without jobs. There is misinformation in the country. I've been receiving requests from my constituency that I must make recommendations for them to get jobs. We want to see what you could do differently to make Nigerians believe in the system, that the system, if you actually work hard and you are qualified, that the system will give you that opportunity without knowing the senator, without knowing the minister, and we want to give that Nigerian that confidence. How can we achieve that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished Senator Garba. In other words, equal opportunity to the child of the farmer and the child of the senator. And secondly, to avoid people graduating and going back home to unemployment for years, sometimes between 5, 7, 10 years. What can the nominee bring to the table by way of initiative to create more employment opportunities for Nigerians? I think that is the summary of your question. Senator Zam.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Dr. Titus Zam. I represent the dynamic people of Benue Northwest Senatorial District. Mr. Nominee, from your presentation, you come from the mass media profession. And one of the pillars of democracy is an informed citizenry. Are you satisfied with the quality of reportage of governmental activities in Nigeria? And if yes, I'd like to ask, how much is the Nigerian citizen aware of the programs of the present administration? If your answer is no, what can you do to improve on the quality of governmental information that reaches the Nigerian grassroots? Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished Senator Zam. For instance, he achieved a lot under the Abuja Property Development Company. But I wonder how many people in Sokoto and Borno know about Abuja Property Development Company. So you are saying that, you are asking whether he's satisfied with the repertoire in respect of governmental policies, because a lot of people may not even partake in government programs if they are not even aware of those government programs. Let me ask distinguished Senator Shehu Buba Umar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as the chair, distinguished colleagues, my name is Shehu Buba Umar, representing good people of Bauchi South. Mr. Nominee, let me start by congratulating you. Listening to your presentations and going through your CV, you, as an English teacher and also a pioneer of various media outfits, such as Blueprints and FM stations. So my question is, if being confirmed by these hallowed chambers, what are you going to do to, before then, I know you are aware of our famous Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, known as FRCN Kaduna. When we were growing in the late 70s and 80s, is the famous radio stations that 19 northern states rely upon, which I believe you believe in that. And now, I believe you are also aware that the nature of FRC in Kaduna is virtually in a state of comatose. All the machines and tools are obsolete. Going by your experience in the media outreach, if eventually confirmed by these hallowed chambers, and eventually Mr. President appoint you to Minister of Communication, what will you do to reorganize, rejuvenate, and bring back life to our famous FRC in Kaduna? Thank you, sir.
Distinguished Senator Biggie.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remain in Piggy Baranada. Mr. Nominee, about 41 years ago, you attended your secondary school and obtained a GCE. But the document before us here is just a statement of result. There is no certified statement of result gotten from WAEC or the Examination Council. How can you prove that to the Senate that this statement of result is free? Thank you.
Yes, distinguished minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, our dear nominee, congratulations. Mr. President, I remember the good days of this program that talks of good people, good nation, and it was meant to put Nigeria in good light, to showcase Nigeria to the world that all about Nigeria is not about criminality and crisis and so on and so forth. As a media practitioner, sir, do you think the media since that time till now, have portrayed Nigeria in good light to the world. I had the opportunity to study in Germany for about 4 years, and I know there are bad things that happen in Europe and any other country in the world. But you will not see this from their media, telling the details of everything that is inimical to the growth and development of their country. But the reverse seems to be the case in Nigeria. Do you think that the media in Nigeria have portrayed Nigeria in their reportage in good light? Or you also have the blueprint? I like that paper, I've been reading it. And how do you think, if you are given the opportunity to serve in this government, how do you think you will use the media and your own media stations, both the print and the electronic media, to portray this country in good light? Thank you.
Dismissed Senator Solomon Adiola Olamilekon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chair, Adiola Solomon Olamilekon, representing Ogun West Senatorial District in the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mr. President, let me join other colleagues of ours in congratulating the nominee as one of the intending minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, having listened to you and looking at your resume, it shows you are a media guru, aside being a teacher. And having been involved in media over the years, I know you will have one or two things to do with the Ministry of Information and Culture. Number one, are you satisfied with the level of our information management as a country? Number two, the following agencies are under the Ministry of Information and Culture. One, the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation. Two, NTA. Are you satisfied with the way the issuance of licensing of radio stations are being carried out presently? Two, the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation have existed in federal government budgets. And the reason why is that they are capable of generating enough revenue to run their day-to-day activities. I want you to x-ray the current Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation as it were, as at today. And are you satisfied with the performances of the Nigerian Television Authority when compared with the channels, the TVC, and all other TV stations of this world? Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Sani Musa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chair, I am Mohammed Sani Musa, representing Niger East Senatorial District. My distinguished colleagues, the nominee standing before us is a representative, a nominee representing Niger State, and that is our constituency. The three distinguished senators of the Federal Republic in this chamber can attest to the credibility of this nominee. The passion this nominee has in driving not only the youths of this country, but the whole Nigerian people in terms of attitude change cannot be overemphasized. As he stands, if you look at him very well, you will see a man of honor standing before you. He is the publisher of Blueprint newspapers. We are all politicians. We have seen what happened during the days of campaigns. But I can attest that there are newspapers that have excelled themselves not to be partisan, and they report as it is. It is not the making of the newspaper, but the brain behind the newspaper. I can also attest that he is in a position to create a brand strategy for this country that will give every one of us the image we so desire. He has been a member of so many international PR organizations. We don't need to always appropriate the meager resources we have, but we should be able to use the strengths of characters of some of the Nigerians we have like him to sell our image, to propagate our image to the international community. He is a mobilizer that can also give credibility by way of image to the policies that this administration or any other administration that will come in Nigeria, will roll out. He will be able to give that image so that there will be understanding. I'm happy that a lot of questions have been thrown to him, of which is far more capable in responding to them. This administration, especially Mr. President, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, have shown that he has come to renew the hope of Nigerians. If you look at the age bracket of the people he has nominated for ministerial position, these are people that will not only introduce the policies, but they are also going to be the ones to implement these policies. The energy is there. And I believe Mohammed Idris is one individual that will be able to rally even among his colleagues in the cabinet when formed, and whichever responsibility given to him, I believe is not only information that he will be able to manage. Mohammed Idris can go into any portfolio, can do his best to any portfolio of responsibility given to him in this country. So I stand on behalf of three of us to appeal to my fellow distinguished colleagues to see reason after he has responded, to appeal to Mr. President to allow the nominee a leave of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. President.
Our esteemed nominee, you may now answer the questions.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Senate President. The first question, I believe, is from distinguished Senator Garba, my senior in the secondary school. He asked about unemployment and what I can do differently to ensure that Nigerian youths are gainfully employed. Well, this is not a task for government alone, and I have demonstrated that in my business practice. Distinguished President of the Senate, I'm employing over 200 people now. Over 100 of them are Nigerians, and 100 of them are Nigerian graduates, those who have obtained degrees from Nigerian universities. Now, what that tells me is that once an enabling environment is created, it is possible for most of our youths out there on the street to be gainfully employed. That's number one. Secondly, it is also important that policies formulated by government should encourage participation by the private sector. Only in so doing can opportunities be created so that those our youth that are out there in the streets would now be taken out of the street. So first, private sector people have to be encouraged to employ people, and the only way that can be done is by creating the enabling environment for private sector to thrive. There is no way that government will continue to employ people. I think the era of thinking that government is the employer of all members of the Nigerian public is over. And if you look at the policies that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is already formulating, the mere fact that about ₦1 trillion has been saved and is going to be plowed back into the economy will mean that there is going to be more private sector participation. And this will in turn stimulate private sector growth that will also be an enabler for employment for our teeming youths. The second one is from the distinguished senator from Benue South. He asked about whether we are satisfied with the level of information that the Nigerian citizenry is getting. Well, I don't think we are satisfied, and I think that this is one of the things that we should strive to improve. Unless credible information is being put out there for Nigerians to consume, there will always be room for rumor. There will always be room for misinformation that may lead to fake news and all kinds of things. I will give an example. Because there was this intense agitation, intense anxiety, I should say, for ministerial list to get to the Senate. So many, because it hadn't come, and the information flow is a bit limited. So many Nigerian youths that are staying idle there were formulating their own list and sending to the members of the public. I have myself seen not less than 7 lists. Only one of them had my name suggested in that. But as somebody who has some experience and some expertise in how news, credible news is sourced and disseminated, I know that most, if not all of those lists were actually mere fabrication. But it's important and it is pertinent that government must provide credible information to Nigerians. That is the only way that the transparency and accountability that government is upholding on will always be guaranteed. The more you uphold, the less you are trusted. And we have this in communications parlance that 50% of the execution of any government project is actually in the communication. So if you don't communicate, people don't get to know what is it that you are doing about. I will cite an example with this Hello Chamber. This is one of the most reported arms of government. What we are doing here now is being beamed across Nigeria and across the world. Now, what that means is that Nigerians are able to judge on their own the quality of the nominees, the quality of the questions, and the responsibility of the Nigerian Senate itself in ensuring that there's credibility in the process that in turn lead to a credible formation of a cabinet that we'll all be proud of. So I feel that we need to do more as Nigerians. And if I'm part of the government, I feel that I will also help to ensure that communication flow is absolutely important, not just in the newspapers, over the radio stations and the television. There is also the responsibility that we have to ensure that all our digital assets that are being used to misinform Nigerians are looked at again, improved on. For example, most of the information we get through the WhatsApp, through Facebook, through Twitter, and all of that, TikTok and all of that. Now, if you're not careful, the tendency is for you to consume anything you see on these digital assets as credible information. But they are not. But we need to do so much to regulate that. It's not something that we can insulate ourselves from. This is a problem that happens all over the world. Like I said, I'm a member of the Online News Association, based in the US. And I know that at every conference that we go to, every country, including America itself, is complaining about fake news. So what do we do with these digital assets? What kind of regulation do we put in place? How do we use that to promote credible flow of information amongst Nigerians? And I think this is very, very important. We try to do same during the campaign. Because if you observe, for those of you in the APC, I served as the Director of Strategic Communication for the campaign. And I know that we use digital assets to promote the manifesto of the party. I think it is important that we need to do that. I'm not as satisfied as we should be. I think things can be better. And we have a collective responsibility to ensure that that is done for peace, for unity, and for the progress of our dear nation. Now, this is tied to the report of government programs. Now, when I began my career, I mentioned here that I left government service as a lecturer in 1995. One of the first things I did was the creation at that time of official newsletters in both English and Hausa for many local governments in Katsina, where I was based at that time. It was a first, and they were using that to get even international attention. We made sure that they circulated these newsletters to development partners that were present in Nigeria. At that time, of course, the use of the internet was a bit limited, but physical copies were being represented. So we can do more of that. Government agencies should be encouraged to tell Nigerians the bulk of the information they have at their disposal. In any case, this information is meant for Nigerians and therefore should not be kept at bay. The senator from Bauchi South asked about FRCN, Kaduna, and then it's also tied with what the distinguished senator from Ogun West also talked about. Are you satisfied with the way the agencies under the Ministry of Information, the MBC and the NTA and all that? Now, what I will say is this. I think that the FRCN and NTA are doing a great job, but they can do better. And the way they can do that is by ensuring that they resort to technology. Pay attention to new technologies that will ensure that information flows. If you look at NTA, for example, if you put it on, despite the fact that it has one of the best brands in this country as far as reportage is concerned, if you look at the quality of the pictures, and then you switch and go to other private ones, people will not be encouraged to get themselves glued to the NTA. So there must be some form of investment in, again, the digital assets. And not just in the purchase. When I mean investment, not just buying the equipment, ensuring that those who are going to man this equipment are properly trained and retrained, because technology is such that if you stay in one position for too long, for more than 6 months, you find yourself obsolete. You need to move and evolve with time. So that should be done. Now, there is a particular thing I want to talk about, especially concerning the MBC. I think that the MBC, that is the regulator of broadcast in this country, need to really move more with the time. For example, the fees that the MBC requests that private owners of radio, TV pay before they can air their programs need to be reviewed downwards. If, for example, somebody wants to invest in a television station and is asked to pay 250 million naira, this is even before you buy any asset. You are requested to pay 250 million naira. Where do you get the funding to now begin to do the rest of the investment? But The regulatory part of them, I think they are doing very well, and they need to strengthen that. Now, someone also asked, distinguished senator, asked about the issuance of licenses. Licenses come with responsibility. Today, there are over 1,000 licenses that are issued. And many of the people that get these licenses are politicians like us. You get this license, and then you put them in your bag, and you go and lock it up somewhere in your house. How does that contribute to information dissemination? Why did you get that license in the first place? Only 50% or even less of the licenses granted by the federal government are actually in operation today. Only less than 50%. So where are the rest? I think that there should be some regulation, tighter regulation, to ensure that you must first of all be a practitioner or a genuine investor in the media industry before such licenses are granted. I think we need to do that, and then control the proliferation. Now, what I mean about proliferation is not that every other radio or TV station that is there is not doing well. Specialized licenses ought to be given for specialized audiences. I think the NBC should take note of that. I am aware that they are already doing that for example, the Nigerian Police, the Federal Road Safety Commission, and a few government agencies. But I think they need to do more of that so that people can rely on such platforms. And distinguished senator from my state, thank you for your kind words. I feel humbled that you find me so worthy, the three of you, for your esteemed consideration. I thank you for your kind words, and I pause there.
The nominee, I must say congratulations in advance. You have answered the questions, and we are quite impressed. So you may now take leave of the Senate. Next nominee, please.